Breakups are never easy, but when it happens to a couple like Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, it feels like something much bigger than just the end of a marriage. It feels like the closing of a Hollywood chapter, the end of a love story that millions of people had believed in for nearly 2 decades. For years, they were the living proof that a movie star and a country singer, two of the most famous people on the planet, could make love last despite fame, distance, and the chaos of public life. They seemed to have everything: devotion, family, success, and an unshakable bond. But on September 30, 2025, that illusion shattered when Nicole officially filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Almost immediately, whispers of tension, long separations, and unspoken heartbreak began to surface. Yet it was Keith Urban's own words, raw and unguarded, that turned quiet speculation into a full-blown emotional storm. I blew it to smithereens." Those 6 words traveled faster than any tabloid headline. Spoken during a small Nashville performance just days after the divorce filing, they weren't rehearsed or carefully crafted, they were pure pain. Keith's voice trembled as he said them, and fans could feel that this wasn't a PR spin or damage control. It was a man stripped of the fame and polish, standing in front of his audience and admitting he'd lost the one thing that mattered most. For a world that had watched Keith and Nicole build a near-mythical partnership, this moment hit differently. It was as if the fairy tale had ended not with betrayal, but with heartbreak, regret, and the undeniable truth that even the most perfect love stories can crumble. Their relationship had begun like something out of a romantic film. The year was 2005, and both were at emotional crossroads. Nicole was 4 years out of her high-profile divorce from Tom Cruise, a breakup that had left her heartbroken and cautious. She'd rebuilt her life, won an Oscar for The Hours, and was slowly learning to trust again. Keith, meanwhile, was a country music superstar at the top of his game, but behind the fame, he was battling deep loneliness and substance abuse. When they met at the G-Day LA event celebrating Australian talent, Nicole later said she felt an immediate spark, but Keith didn't call her for 3 months. "I was intimidated," he later admitted. "When he finally did, everything fell into place." Their connection was instant and electric. Within a year, they were married in a candlelit ceremony in Sydney, surrounded by family, friends, and love. In the early years, their marriage looked invincible. They were affectionate in interviews, supportive of each other's careers, and deeply protective of their private life. But that fairytale shimmer began to fade just months after their wedding, when Keith checked himself into rehab for alcohol and drug addiction. For many couples, that would have been the breaking point. But Nicole didn't walk away. She staged an intervention, brought him home, and stood by his side as he fought for his sobriety. Keith would later call her his savior, the woman who saved his life when he was at rock bottom. It was one of those moments that turned them into Hollywood's golden couple, not because they were perfect, but because they had overcome something real. For years after, their relationship seemed solid. They shared 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, and built a home filled with love and laughter. Keith often spoke about how much Nicole grounded him, while Nicole credited him for giving her stability after years of turmoil. They walked red carpets hand in hand, exchanged tearful tributes in award speeches, and always seemed genuinely in sync. Fans adored them because they didn't just look like a power couple, they looked like best friends who had survived the fire and come out stronger. But the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. As both of their careers continued to skyrocket, their time together became more limited. Nicole's filming schedule took her across continents: London, Paris, Australia, and New York, while Keith's tour kept him on the road for months at a time. They did everything they could to make it work: surprise visits, family vacations, long FaceTime calls. But over time, the distance began to erode the closeness they once had. Friends close to the couple said that even when they were together, they were often in different worlds. Nicole focused on scripts and set life, Keith consumed by songwriting and performances. The cracks began to show quietly, hidden behind smiles and public affection. When Keith took the stage at the 2024 AFI tribute to honor Nicole, fans saw what looked like a deeply emotional moment. His voice broke as he thanked her for rescuing him, calling her his North Star and the one who never gave up on me. It was beautiful, but in hindsight, many now see it as a plea, a confession of guilt more than gratitude. Less than a year later, his heartbreaking words, "I blew it," made sense. Then came the rumors. As soon as news of the divorce hit the media, whispers about a third person began circulating. Attention quickly turned to Maggie Baugh, a 25-year-old guitarist who had been touring with Keith. Social media was flooded with videos showing playful exchanges between them on stage, inside jokes, and even moments where Keith reportedly changed song lyrics to include her name. Fans were divided. Some believed it was harmless banter, others saw something deeper. Even Maggie's father made cryptic comments that only fueled speculation. Neither Keith nor Maggie has confirmed anything, but the damage was already done. Still, some argue that the other woman in this story might not be a person at all. It could have been the relentless pull of fame, the touring lifestyle, and the distance that fame always creates between two people who once promised forever. Nicole, true to her nature, has remained silent through the storm. No public statements, no interviews, no social media posts, just grace. Those close to her say she was devastated but not blindsided. The signs had been there for months, maybe even years. The constant separations, the emotional exhaustion, the feeling that she was the only one holding things together, it all eventually became too heavy to carry. Nicole's priority now is her daughters. She's reportedly focusing on keeping their lives as stable and private as possible, shielding them from the spotlight as much as she can. For Nicole, this isn't the first time her heart has been tested in the public eye. Her divorce from Tom Cruise in 2001 left her reeling, but she came back stronger, winning an Academy Award, raising her children, and finding a second chance at love. When Keith entered her life, she truly believed it was her happily ever after. He was the opposite of everything her first marriage represented: grounded, kind, and emotionally open. Their love wasn't built on Hollywood glamour but on shared vulnerability. That's why this breakup feels especially tragic. It's not the end of a shallow romance, but the loss of something deeply human and hard-won. Adding another layer to the story is their prenup, which included a sobriety clause. Nicole had reportedly included a provision that Keith would receive $600,000 for each year he remained sober, a gesture that showed both love and accountability. Since he's been clean since 2006, that adds up to more than $11 million. The clause, while unusual, was a symbol of the trust and faith Nicole placed in him, and the seriousness with which they both took his recovery. It's a reminder that their relationship was never just about fame or wealth. It was about survival, redemption, and love in its most complicated form. Now, as they part ways, both seem to be handling the split with quiet dignity. Nicole is focusing on upcoming projects, including a major HBO series and a return to the stage. Keith, meanwhile, is said to be channeling his pain into his music, preparing an album that some sources say will be his most emotional work yet. They remain committed to co-parenting and ensuring their daughters are shielded from the fallout. Despite everything, there's no animosity, only sadness, respect, and the unspoken understanding that sometimes love just isn't enough to withstand the weight of two enormous lives. In the end, the story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban isn't just another celebrity divorce. It's a love story that reminds us how fragile even the strongest connections can be. They had it all: love, success, family, redemption. But love, no matter how powerful, can fade under the pressure of fame, time, and distance. Their relationship began as a beacon of hope and ended as a lesson in vulnerability. It showed that behind every perfect photograph and every romantic interview are two people trying, sometimes failing, to hold on to something real. Their breakup isn't about scandal or betrayal. It's about humanity, the reality that even when two people love each other deeply, life can pull them apart. And yet, through it all, there's a lingering beauty in what they shared. For nearly 20 years, they gave the world a glimpse of what love could be when it's both tender and fierce, fragile and resilient. And though their story has ended, it will be remembered not for how it fell apart, but for how brightly it once burned.